Welcome to Constant Contemplations. I'm your host, Jonathan Constant. Glad for you to join me today. Today is Wednesday. Wacky Wednesdays. Now, how today works is I get a random topic suggestion from one of my listeners, and I talk about it. Or, depending on how I feel, I choose the topic. And since I don't have any listeners at the moment, I will be choosing the topic today. And today, we are going to be discussing Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Now, you may be asking, who is Dave Ramsey and what are his baby steps? Well, I'm going to answer that question for you today. Okay, so a little background on Dave Ramsey and the baby steps. Dave Ramsey is a very popular on-air personality. He has his own radio show, and he gives financial advice to struggling Americans. And not only advice on how to get out of debt, but also how to save money, how to invest your money. But the crux of his entire operation is speaking on how to get out of debt, because that is the plague that is infecting Americans today. So many Americans are in debt. If you're listening right now, it is statistically proven that you are more than likely in debt to somebody or something or some entity. So a few months ago, about half a year ago, I was just scouring YouTube and just wondering, okay, what do I need to do to get better grasp of my money? So I stumbled upon Dave Ramsey and his 7 baby steps. So we're going to go over those 7 baby steps because I do believe in the Ramsey financial ideology. And I hope by the end of the podcast, maybe you'll go for that as well. So we're going to go step by step, and we're going to explain each individual step. Okay. Now, Dave Ramsey called it baby steps because he knows how the average person thinks. And when you're looking at your debt, you stare at it, it could be tens of thousands of dollars, and you can be overwhelmed. So he said, listen, we're going to break it down. We're going to call it baby steps because that's easier to digest. And that way you won't be overwhelmed. So let's start with step 1. Baby step 1. So Dave Ramsey suggests in baby step 1 to save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. Now you may be thinking, $1,000 for emergencies? That's nothing. And you're absolutely right. He just wants you to have a starter emergency fund, something stashed away to give you just a little bit of confidence, because he knows most Americans don't save their money. They don't have a savings. So he tells you, hey, listen, put $1,000 away. It'll give you a little confidence, but it'll keep you on your toes. $1,000. And he suggests to put it in a place that you cannot access it. So an online savings or just somewhere you just can't reach it easily. So that's baby step 1. For baby step 2, he says that you have to pay off all your debt except your house, because that's a really big debt. So he said, don't pay attention to the house payment just yet, except for, of course, the minimum. But he says, pay off all your debt. Now, this step is where a lot of people fail, or a lot of people just get overwhelmed because some people have tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. So this, for some people, may take a very long time, years actually sometimes, to complete. And this is the step I'm currently on. So I can personally attest to its difficulty in completing. So he says pay off all your debt except your house. The way he wants you to pay off your debt is by using a method called the debt snowball. Basically, how the debt snowball works is you list your debts from smallest to largest. And he tells you to pay off those debts from the smallest debt to the largest debt. Now, anyone worth their 2 cents in math and financial sensibilities would say, well, why wouldn't you list your debt by interest rate and pay off the debt with the largest interest rate first? Well, Dave is a very experienced financial advisor, and he has found in his years of giving financial advice that simply isn't effective. Now, it is mathematically effective, but it isn't emotionally effective. And that's what he learned by helping tons of people and seeing just various failures left and right. This is what I mean by emotionally effective. What Dave Ramsey discovered in his many years of helping people is that debt is not a mathematical problem. And he says it often. He says if it was a mathematical problem, nobody would be in debt, or not a lot of people would be in debt. This is not a mathematical problem. This is a behavioral problem. This is an emotional problem. People often get into debt based on their emotions. They get into debt based on their spending behavior. They see that nice car or that big screen TV and they say to themselves, well, I know that's a lot of money, but I have good credit. I can break it down into many different payments. And then next thing you know, they're doing that with everything they buy, and they're in so much debt, it's up to their ears. So he said, okay, let's not think of this in terms of mathematics. Let's think of it in terms of behavior. What makes people feel good? Well, if you're paying off debt from the smallest debt to the largest debt, once you bang out that little debt, even though that debt didn't have a super high interest rate, just getting that balance to zero gives you an emotional boost, a psychological boost, and that will encourage you to stay the course. So I think it's genius the way he came up with this, because it is very true. People buy stuff or they get into debt because of things that make them feel good. And I can personally attest to it. I started baby step 2, and as soon as my lowest credit card, which was like $500, hit zero, I was hyped. I'm not going to lie to you. I was super hyped. And I said, you know what? That zero looks good. Let's go for another card or another debt. And we're still going at it to this day. It's only been maybe more than 6 months, but we're going strong. And just getting those balances down to zero is just keeping us faithful that, hey, we can get out of our debt. Now we're starting to get to the point where we're paying off our larger debts. So we're really feeling that baby step 2, but we are still doing it. And that's the important thing. Baby step 3. Once you're out of that debt cycle and you paid off all your debt, baby step 3, he says to save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. So that $1,000 that you set aside at the start, where you're sweating and you're like, oh my God, if something happens and it's cost more than $1,000, I'm going to be in trouble, so on and so forth. Now you can bolster that account and throw 3 to 6 months of expenses into that account. So that's great. And it's very old school. You know, a lot of people are, well, why would you just leave the money sitting there? You could be doing this and that with it. You can be investing. Listen, you can never go wrong with having grandma and grandpa's money saving ideology. Grandma and grandpa used to say, hey, listen, save some money, have something just in case for a rainy day. And it was wise. It was incredibly wise, because how many times have you had just that back-breaking emergency come up and you had that money set aside and you're like, oh, thank goodness I put that aside. That is a great feeling to have. And it just gives you that boost in confidence where no matter what happens, you know, okay, I'm set for 3 to 6 months. I can survive whatever comes my way. So again, very wise, his advice on saving up money for 3 to 6 months. Step 4, baby step 4. He says, invest 15% of your household income in retirement. So now you have money for right now. You're not paying off any debts. Now all that money you were paying towards your debt, you can put towards saving up for retirement. I'm not too well versed in that section right now because I'm still in number 2. But he does give a lot of advice on what to invest in. He gives very specific advice. And if you want to know more about where he says to invest in terms of retirement when it comes to IRAs and things like that, you can certainly look him up. It's a quick Google search, and you can definitely go to his website for more information on that. Step 5. If you have children, save up for your children's college fund. Student loan debt is one of the biggest sources of debt in the United States. Bet you didn't know that. Or maybe you did. Who knows? But it really is a huge debt. Do you want to set your children up for that type of struggle once they're getting ready to go to college? Certainly not. Now, of course, you encourage your child to get scholarships and all kinds of grants and things of that nature, but sometimes for some, that's not exactly a reality. Save for their college fund now if you intend for your children to go to college. We have baby steps 6 and 7 coming up, but first, a word from our sponsors. Constant Contemplations was brought to you by... Oh, actually, we don't have a sponsor yet. Gotta fix that. We need sponsors. Please, sponsor us. All right, so baby step 6 is paying off your home early. Now, this one is probably going to freak some people out because it's so atypical of the debt-infested lifestyle of America. We are so used to sitting there paying off our mortgage over the course of 40 years or so, making the minimum payments, paying a whole bunch in interest, and so on and so forth. It's so hard to break the cycle. It's deeply ingrained mentally in Americans that, okay, well, this is my life. I'm going to, work my 9 to 5 and pay off my mortgage little by little and, have all this consumer debt. And this is what's going to be a life for me for the next few years. Or should I say the next few decades? It doesn't have to be that way. And in baby step 6, that's where you're really going to get some just freaked out feelings because you are putting a lot of money towards paying down your mortgage. But it is entirely possible. If you look it up on YouTube or listen in on his radio show, you will find so many people who have paid off their mortgage outright. And we're not talking some cheap mortgage here, okay? $200K plus people have paid this thing off. And I'm not even talking about people who are millionaires, although that certainly helps. These are people like you and me, unless there's a millionaire listening in on the podcast. And if they are, slide a few my way, help me out on Patreon. Help me out on that sponsor. Yeah, pay off your mortgage. Put it out of your life. Very powerful stuff. Baby step 7. Build wealth and give. Now, isn't that something that's atypical of Americans today? We're all about building and amassing wealth for ourselves. Now, of course, there's some people out there who are kind and generous. I'm not talking about them, but the vast majority is about building money so that they can feed their family and hoard tons and tons of cash and keep it all for themselves. That's not what baby step 7 is about. It's about giving to other people. Now, Dave Ramsey has a little slogan, and I love it. He says, live like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one else. So it's about being strict now for that payoff later, where you can have that money and be able to give it to other people. Now, of course, it doesn't mean, just be dumb and just throw money away. It just means that now that you have gotten yourself out of this mess, you can be a blessing to other people. So those are the baby steps, 1 through 7. Again, it's save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. Pay off all your debt except for the house using the debt snowball method. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. Invest 15% of your household income in retirement. Save for your children's college fund. Pay off your home early. And then build wealth and give. I don't know about you, but this is some pretty sound advice. And you want to know why? It's because he bases all of his stuff, this whole ideology, on Bible principles. Now, some people may be turned off by, Dave Ramsey being a Christian, and it's like, oh God, he's going to beat us over the head with the Bible. And so, listen, it is my firm belief that the book of Proverbs alone has so much advice in terms of choosing your friends, how to spend your money, how to spend your time. I think even if you're not religious, that is some valuable advice. And with Dave Ramsey, this advice is applicable to anybody who wants to have financial sense. No matter where the source comes from, this advice just works. And you want to know how he knows it works or how I know it works? Tons and tons of people have benefited from it. He has so many success stories. If you go on YouTube and look up all of the success stories of people who actually followed the advice and where their lives are now, you would be amazed. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you going to break the cycle? Or are you going to be normal and just stay in debt and, I'm going to pay off my house in 40, 50 years when I'm too old to enjoy it? What is your choice? What are you going to do? That's it for me today on Wacky Wednesdays. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Want more constant contemplations? Check out Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from.